if humanity is going to be a true monument, it's built on our primitive
It's going
creaturehood,
to incorporate all that.
not
Yeah.
not in spite of it. Some wiring doesn't come through.
All right.
Looks like he got it done though. Cheers, Father.
Son.
After a little break.
Yeah. Little one.
I was resting all last week.
Did that work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did it.
Okay.
Yeah, it did what it was supposed to. Flip the burger.
Flip the burger. This is some. This is
It's not
some
exactly
newfangled idiom I've missed out on so far.
Well, it flips so you can cook the other side.
Yeah. I know why
I don't
it
know if you were
It seemed familiar. I don't know.
of this ancient process.
Yeah.
Cooking meat. Yeah, it was good. It was good. Took myself on a little vacay that was tagged on to tuning I had
Oh.
deep in the hills in Tuolumne,
Okay.
Jackson
Yeah.
Hills.
Right. Yeah.
And there's there's really beautiful places out
I
there.
bet.
And, found a cave to go into.
No kidding.
Took
That's pretty
a
cool.
little tour. It was very cool. Yeah, it's this place called Moaning Caverns, and it's basically it's one big chamber, and apparently it's like the biggest single chamber cave in California.
Oh.
And so it takes you from ground level and then takes you down this completely straight vertical spiral staircase
Okay.
that is made out of like parts from a World War I battleship that were shipped to the location, loaded down into the cave, and then welded from the ground up.
I see.
And so you walk down this narrow spiral staircase made of metal.
Right.
That's
Down into the earth.
yeah, that's like 100 years old this year,
Okay.
and still solid.
Fine,
Hasn't
yeah.
needed anything. Apparently, it's like this marvel of welding, and like welders from all around will come to see that.
Oh. Okay.
Let alone the cave.
Tune up. All right.
Yeah, apparently it was like a serious feat. And it's very impressive.
I bet.
It's very impressive. I'll show you pictures and I'll
Yeah.
include some in the video. But it takes you down this straight spiral staircase, 165 feet
Okay.
down into the earth, and then there's just a platform where you get to behold the chamber. And
So when you you get to the bottom, it opens up, or
it's open around you. So you're a little,
get around the staircase.
yeah, you're a little removed to the side, but you can
Okay.
behold the space. You're
I
in
see.
it as you
I see.
descend. And
So did you just
yeah.
stumble on that, or had you found out about it
I
in
looked.
advance?
I looked after going to Shasta Caverns a few months ago, and being in a cave sort of theme artistically. I've taken a new liking to them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I suspect I'll continue to do so. Keep finding caves around the world.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very, very cool. Very cool. It's, at some point, the tour guide, it was just me and this family of 4, with 2 little girls, and then the tour guide. And at some point, he was describing what it must have been like for the first people to discover it.
Yeah.
And like the natives in the area had all sorts of stories and tales about it, but couldn't get down in there. But apparently someone did, because there were stories about it, and stories about bones, and which would be insane to imagine someone managing to do that. And then describing the miners that were looking for gold, and ended up being the ones who owned it, claimed it.
Right. Right.
How they were just lowering themselves down by like a rope and a bucket, and
right.
with like a candle in their mouth or something.
Right. And not even a good rope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was telling that story, and that was trippy enough just to like try and imagine. And then he turned off all the lights in the cave.
Yeah.
In the cave. And that was when like I understood a cave. Because before it's lit up in really tasteful ways and specific points in the cave to make it really beautiful. But yeah, then he turns off the lights, and then it's like, this is what a cave is. This complete, total darkness.
Yeah.
Like a darkness that
we hardly ever experience anymore.
You can't really get anywhere else.
Sure.
Except for like pre-birth or something.
Right.
And after.
Yeah.
And that was that was profound, like opening and closing your eyes in such a space. And
I bet it was.
And then being able to take that imagination further of what it would be like to go down in a cave for the first time. Mm-hmm. And it's insane. Or like that was the experience of like, oh my God, the gall, the gall of someone to go down in complete darkness, have no idea of the shape of the thing. They have no sense of where anything, the walls, anything is. They're just going down into the literal unknown. And I had some respect for them.
Rightly
like,
so.
Damn.
Right.
Adventurers.
Yeah, that's some serious adventure there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild. Highly suggest. Highly suggest. It's like $25.
Oh,
It's
well worth it.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. It really is.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah, that experience of darkness, and then it does something, yeah, profound to physiology. Um, it's like deeply, deeply rejuvenating. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then paired with surfacing again and being out in the daylight, there is something like, there is definitely some rebirthing that occurs, which, yeah,
That's
yeah,
what that. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah.
And what's the name of this place?
It's called Moaning Caverns. And Moaning Caverns Adventure Park.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, and then they have a whole tour where you can, for I think a couple $100, get fitted with headlamp and gloves and rope and go get on your hands and knees and really splunk the thing, because the chamber goes even deeper.
Okay.
And you can crawl and
you
can get in there if you want to.
If you want to, yeah. Huh.
Which I suspect I'll
That's pretty exciting.
I'll do at some point
Yeah.
in my life. Yeah, it was very cool. And then I camped out at a spot nearby on this lake that was like completely deserted. There's maybe like one other person in the 90 campsites.
Cool. Yeah.
So I ended up being like, yeah, it's a very like kind of walkabout vacation,
Right.
which I was wanting and needing. Just spent a night out in the cut.
Did you have
alone.
a tent, or were you under the stars? No.
Yeah. The single person one that I got from you.
Oh.
Just
yeah.
excellent.
That'll do just nicely. Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, it was good.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it was a good break.
Yeah, it was a good break. Yeah, and like I was beginning to say, I've been intermittent fasting of a sort the last week or so, and going like 12, 14 hours, and just pushing my first bit of food back.
So would the interval start when you wake up, I guess?
When I last eat in the evening, and then through sleep to about midday.
Oh, I see.
And
okay.
Been playing with that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about fasting. Because I haven't in God knows how long.
Yeah, it's been. I've done it at different times. I'm doing a more daily run of it this time, and I definitely notice I'm a bit more sharp in the morning, and there's just a bit more buoyancy. Just in general, like it feels like a bit of a cleaner burn
Oh,
of things. Yeah, it's interesting. Playing with it. And I notice when I've done it in the past, I had often noticed that the day after I would do a block of fasting, not like a full day or days,
yeah.
but just like something like 12 to 16 hours. The day after, I would have a lot more just endurance, like stamina,
Huh.
which I'm noticing now too. Yeah.
Hmm.
So. Interesting.
Well, I'd like to
Talk
talk,
about?
about vegetarianism
Sure, we're on the diet.
and veganism
Okay.
and all, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I've for the last month and a half, I've been eating meat again. For the first time in
Years.
10 years.
Yeah.
And it's
why?
yeah. Well, I had been thinking about it. It started a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, that I started to think about it again, and just out of curiosity, wondering where I was with the issue of eating meat or not, and curious about testing it and seeing seeing if a change would be in order, if vegetarianism is still what I need.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been curious about it, and then Jade had suggested to me that I eat meat.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm already on the track of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what began it. And
So is the meat restricted? I mean, do you avoid any particular kinds of flesh? No.
not yet. Not yet. I started with salmon, which
That's pretty mild as meat goes. As
yeah,
flesh
for
goes,
me
yeah.
it was weird though. I hated fish growing up. Like
Oh.
I was down with all meat except for fish.
Mm-hmm.
So for me it was like the most weird thing to get.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was it's a pretty kind of intense experience.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like the moment it touched my tongue, like my whole body was like, what
This
the
is different.
fuck? What the fuck is this?
You were at a restaurant?
No,
Oh.
Jade had made me a salmon
Okay.
as a gift.
Okay. Yeah.
An introduction, or a cut of it.
Yeah.
Another. Still learning how to
Right.
speak about such things. Yeah, it was wild. It was wild. My whole body like rang with a kind of invigoration upon the moment it touched my tongue, and then eating it was like this really, it's probably adrenaline going through my system as it was happening, like partial like shock, partial like I think identity shock in the moment of it too. And and I think also like this invigoration of my body, like there's an element of it being foreign, there's an element of psychologically the contrast of doing that, and then I think also my body was like taking to it. Yeah, it was a trip, and yes, so since then been basically every day eating some sort of meat, and still mostly doing what I've always done, food-wise, because I enjoy what I do, and it's been working, but plus meat, and and I'm just in experimental mode. I like trying it out, and
So is salmon the only fish you've had so far?
no, I've well, there's still a lot to try. There's a lot of animals out there.
I'm sure.
But no, I've had beef and a lot of chicken and some pork. Haven't had a steak yet though. That's getting close. That's
okay.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a good sample, there's got to be a slab in there somewhere.
Surely, yeah. But physically, the change hasn't been massive. Like, I was already pretty fucking healthy and eat a shit ton of protein.
Right.
So the change hasn't been dramatic, but there is a basic level of vigor that's increased. Like my baseline energy is definitely higher.
Okay. That's good.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm having a good time with it.
Well, good. It opens up another world.
It does, yeah, and the psychological element has been just as interesting, if not even more so, than the physical part. Just like it's illuminating a lot of things, like there was so much of my identity that was associated with being a vegetarian, not eating meat, and and it's been interesting to just encounter that fall away, and like the element of virtue that I've associated with it. Like, I don't have that.
You gotta think of something else.
Yeah, I don't.
Right.
It's no longer a badge of virtue that I'm wearing,
Right.
which was really interesting to encounter, and and I don't really care.
Okay. And that, I mean, that aspect interests me.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you just, just flung that badge aside.
yeah. I saw it fall away, and I was like, oh, yeah. I've had that patch, but I don't give a
Right.
shit.
Right.
Like,
I
or
know.
like, yeah. That's not like the fullest expression of that actual experience, but yeah. So like my initial decision to become a vegetarian was because of a terrible, terrible documentary um, that scarred me deeply. And,
Yeah. Yeah. That one.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, Mom had been vegetarian since she was 17, but that didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
It was this documentary that, yeah, about factory farming and just how awful it is,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, yeah, seriously ingrained in me, and um, and it's been interesting to, so as I've begun to eat meat and counter that initial decision and see how there was a kind of PTSD with that moment of decision. Um, like,
Mm.
it was this moment of, God, feeling, yeah, like scarred by what humans are possible or capable of.
Oh. Yeah. Well.
It was some encounter with like
Uh
um, brutality
huh.
that seriously inflicted me and my, what I'm seeing as far as identity, like who I was, because I'm a human too.
Sure.
It's um, like there was such this assumption of a shame about the whole ordeal,
Just being involved in
being involved,
it. Mm-hmm.
and um, and this, and having that effect, like it very much goes with the mindset of for me it has gone with the mindset of like do no harm, like try to restrain yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, like restrain from violence, um, don't take part in this evil,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, it's really intense. It's a really intense like wiring of myself, and like yeah, it really shaped me in a way. It really
Mm-hmm.
like set a trajectory of how I was viewing myself, and went along with this kind of like this like a fear of brutality, a fear of violence,
Mm-hmm.
a fear of that, of killing an animal. Like that seemed so unheard of to me. Perhaps at the time too, because I had never had any contact with actually slaughtering an animal. And so that was the most explicit it had ever been, was like the worst version of it.
Right. Yeah.
So it was like, well, if that's what it means, then
No, thank you. Uh-huh.
I will not partake. But yeah, so it's a really interesting change of like there's definitely a kind of guilt of self that's falling away
That's good.
in the process, and like there's a kind of embracing of creaturehood that I feel like is happening too.
Yes. Right.
And my creaturehood,
Mm-hmm.
and my place as a beast of the earth, as well as a conscious mind,
Uh-huh.
and the spirit and such. Like,
Right. You do kind of have to, I mean, if you think about it, that's, or never scratch all that. The way I think of it is,
okay.
is that it's, I mean, I'm just one guy in this, God knows how long, chain of evolution. And somehow other guys, other organisms like me have been eating other organisms the whole time. And it's not that, what's been going on a long time is therefore virtuous or even acceptable. But at this point, I think it's probably not the worst thing in the world. If it's been happening this long and we're still functioning, then maybe I just need a bigger point of view. I mean, I don't guilt, a dog for chasing a squirrel or killing a squirrel, eating it.
Some people do.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do, but I don't.
Yeah, yeah.
That's reasonable. I mean, the thing that concerns and interests me most is sometimes I think that everything probably, but at least consuming animal flesh is too easy, which is where the factory farms and stuff come in, to make it easy for us.
Yeah.
And So when I'm king, you can eat meat only if you kill something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you've somehow got to be involved, and not every time,
Yeah.
but that would you would get a temporary license, if you have
Yeah.
taken some animal's life and then eaten it.
Yeah.
Then that gives you some cred in my world that
Yeah.
that most of us just don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That's I've shared in that kind of attitude. Like, yeah, over the years, my view of eating meat, period, for all people has grown to where, like, I don't shame. I haven't shamed people in a long time for where I would have it at an earlier age.
Well,
Yeah, I do. It has not been a bad thing. Like,
uh,
but my rule has been for myself that, like, I couldn't eat meat if like I would have to feel like I could kill an animal.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do. No.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is wild. Is wild. Um, and that's part of this mission too. Is I'm gonna go find a way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that I agree. I think that should be a part of it. I think it is too easy. A big part of the problem is just people have been disconnected from the reality of it.
Right.
And I think when you are, my sense is, I'm new to all this, but my sense is, like, when you are closer to the experience of it, you feel the rightness of
Mm-hmm.
the circle of life. You feel,
Right.
you respect. I think it's at least imagining myself in such a situation, like, it would be a deeply meaningful experience to kill an animal, and, like, respect driven
Uh-huh.
and, like, gracious.
Right. And I understand that the kinds of, well, the stuff I've heard at least about Native Americans and their, giving some props to this buffalo or whatever it was,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
killed. This is, I acknowledge your, existence, and
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
appreciate, what you're doing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah. So, when you were a vegetarian, it was mostly, your reasoning was ethical and
The initial. Yeah.
philosophical, and
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to dietary
Yeah. That's never been the case.
advantages, or anything.
Yeah. That's never held any weight to me.
Mm-hmm.
That meat is somehow bad for you.
Yeah.
It would be worth. Maybe I could look into the arguments a bit of that, but that seems. I don't know what you could say about that.
Yeah, that's kind of a long shot.
Is it
It
really?
couldn't be that, yeah.
How did
Probably
we
not.
get here?
We're not talking about, 10 hamburgers a day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, okay.
yeah, so it's very interesting. It's still gathering data on the whole experience. I've
Well,
thought at times that I could possibly go back to being vegetarian, and some sort of like part of what attracted me to it also is a kind of essentialism. Like it's just not necessary to kill an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an interesting notion that I've kind of replaced with, that I'm playing with now I'm playing with a new idea, I guess, of like receiving all that this world has to give.
Mm-hmm.
Taking full part in as much of this world as possible. And seeing flesh and flesh eating as a part of that, like
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, one giant organism that's the earth being one giant organism, and the ecology of the earth being a
Right.
giant unity that
Right.
is blending and processing itself and producing
Mm-hmm.
itself, and I like that idea way more right now, because the other one of essentialism, which I enjoy as a just kind of value
Mm-hmm.
in a way, was bent more towards like restraining from existence
Uh-huh.
and trying to minimize
Mm-hmm.
existence and footprint, and
right.
I'm just tired of that.
Yeah.
Tired of that being like a fundamental orientation.
Right.
I think it's a important tempering virtue,
Mm-hmm.
but not a value.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fundamental value. Restraint cannot be a fundamental
No. You could just do nothing and win right away. Yeah.
So
I see.
yeah. Even if I became a vegetarian again or something, this whole experience has been so valuable. Just the thoughts that it's stimulating, and like the change
Mm-hmm.
of attitude,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I do. I see. I was, I don't know, I may have mentioned this. I was a vegetarian for about a year and a half in the late 70s,
okay,
right around your age.
okay,
And it was interesting. It was probably partly, or it felt partly fashionable, and a lot of people were doing it. I just wanted to see what
all
this
this
is
about.
about. Yeah,
What's all this?
yeah. Let's. Does it matter? Will I like it?
Yeah, yeah. Don't want to get on this.
Right. Yeah, do I
Bandwagon?
want to go hop on this train? I don't know. So I did it for a while, and then said, no, I don't think so. it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't as. It wasn't all that traumatic because it hadn't been very long. So, my habits or none of that really changed.
Yeah.
I just ate meat again. And I think that's probably when I began to develop some respect for hunters who, whose approach is primal, and
Yeah, they're there
so,
for the event.
yes, right, and they're, in some ways they're more in touch with, I don't know, maybe their animal nature. I don't know how to characterize it offhand, but
Yeah.
their experience encompasses more of life, really.
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can,
That's.
yeah, I can respect that, and
Yeah.
although
Yeah,
a lot of people I know, kind of look down their noses at hunters as, I don't know, low life. I don't know. Maybe just as, kind of more primitive. But I think primitive is fine. That's okay. That's closer to the origin, closer to the earth, closer to nature.
Yeah, there's definitely been some big, sweeping judgments cast about what it means to be civilized. Um,
Amen.
and it's very Christian dogma. It's very influenced by Christian dogma of like rising above your animal nature,
Right,
transcend your creaturehood.
right.
Um,
Good luck with that.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
rise above your base desires.
Yeah, all right. As opposed to enjoying them, appreciating them for whatever role they might
Yeah,
play.
yeah, which is a serious split of a psyche, of a human psyche.
I think civilization requires that, though.
Civilization acquires.
Requires some kind of disconnect, some kind of compartmentalization of things, of different aspects of life and requirements, and so that you can, or are required to ignore all the little individual circumstances and tendencies and penchants of various people in order to observe, say, a law which says that this behavior, this act or something is always wrong under all circumstances, everywhere, all the time. Let's see.
I mean, that's a tough one to sort out, because like.
I know. And I'm kind of sorry I brought it up now because I haven't
Triggered me.
Because yeah, and
No,
I realize
I'm
how messy the whole thing is.
I mean, I'm down. Like, it's a tough one to sort out, but yeah, I'm glad to try a bit. Like, my immediate reaction is like, that's how we've gone about civilization in this Earth's history. But I'm not convinced that they're inherently the case. I think it involves like some level of being that very human objectivism and a human's ability to see things objectively as distinct from things, as to be able to zoom out and create conceptual categories and but I think at least in terms of our civilization, we went about it in a particular way of very Christian influenced, productively so and less so. Lots of good stuff.
Right.
Some very bad things.
Yeah.
Or less good. very much less good. And that definitely resulted in some there was a lot of just pushing from Christian manipulators too, to shame the flesh.
Sure.
And shame creaturehood, and
Sure.
shame earthliness, and
And see, I think of that kind of shaming and labeling and like that as part of or methods of control to
yeah, for sure.
yeah, and that's
To
what?
call the flesh sinful is a great way to
Right.
make people feel guilty, and guilty people are easily blown about.
Yes.
And
Right.
yeah,
And I don't know that's been a good thing overall. And I guess part of it, I really need a dictionary here. I remember running across a definition of civilization
yeah,
that required monumental architecture.
that's what
That's part of it.
that would be the weather vane of civilization.
Well, that's one of them, yeah.
Is
yeah.
monumental architecture.
Monumental architecture. So if you
cool.
don't have big things, then there's no civilization. So that no matter how well, say, I don't know, Australian Aborigines, for instance, no matter how well they functioned in their environment, no matter how well they treated each other, no matter how kind of self-satisfied they were. They didn't have big buildings and roads and pyramids or whatever. So their organization, social organization, just doesn't count. It's because it doesn't meet all the criteria. And I see the problem is I can't remember what the other criteria were. But it just seems to me that if you've got to have the Twin Towers, then then that's okay. But it means for me that civilization is not automatically a good thing. You know, and the way it's talked about is civilization is always good. To be uncivilized is a bad thing. And I can't quite buy that.
Yeah, it's often way too black and white of a conversation.
Yeah, and a system of laws was also part of it, so that there are rules and things that everybody abides by, and that's, I think that kind of thing has to. Some of those have to exist in order for us to get along with each other, even in small groups. There need to be some things that we have agreed are detrimental to our collective relationships.
Yeah.
And of course, what those things are depends on where you are and who's around you. But civilization's okay. Western Civ, that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah, we're talking about the West. Well, I'm gonna go with the element of building and monuments, because I think immediately hearing monumental architecture, just is, I love that. It immediately is a pleasurable thing to consider, because I love huge, beautiful architecture.
Sure.
And huge fan. Huge fan. Glad that happened. And what I want to say about it, I guess, in terms of, in relation to civilization and that being a criteria of civilization. Well, it implies if you're building huge fucking structures, it implies a certain mastery of things, other things, food,
Right.
production of food,
Right.
A certain mastery of peace amongst the people and unification of the people, where there's enough coordination and resources and time to be doing that.
Right. You do have some extra time on your hands.
You got some extra time on your hands,
Yeah.
which I think is a good thing, and that's part of the idea of civilization, to have more and more of the world and living in harmony.
Yeah, and I'm right with you.
Yeah.
And then I think about hunter-gatherers, for instance, being said to, work 3-4 hours a day, tops.
Yeah.
And that seems, in those instances, that seems like a benefit of no civilization in our terms.
Yeah, if the goal was to work as little as possible,
Yeah.
which I do not, that is definitely not my goal.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, okay, that's interesting. Like, because I've heard that gets brought up.
Yeah.
Like, which I
Right.
think it's good that it does, because it matters what the goal is here.
Sure.
And
And it's not that you could work more, do more stuff as much as you want,
yeah,
but it's not 40 hours a week.
something that does point to some like ideal that's nested in that hunter-gatherer
Yeah.
vision of a tribe that has developed their own level of civilization, of coordination with each other and mastery of their environment. It's like, that does imply this kind of like potency, like
Mm-hmm.
like they're only working 3-4 hours a day because they're working on the like essential thing,
Right.
and that feels super important, and that's definitely something that I want to carry forward and I think should be carried forward.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that kind of comes down to the essentialism element of like a primitive culture, like
Mm-hmm.
that should be carried forward in some way. But part of what like Western Civ has allowed for in this building of this world has allowed perhaps more individuals to determine what's essential for them,
Mm-hmm.
and then to focus on that. And allows what's essential to be more unique and individual and of the person and of the
Mm-hmm.
spirit of the person and the mind of the person.
Have you read any Harari? Yuval Noah Harari?
Mm-mm. This is the Sapiens dude.
Sapiens dude, yes.
No, I haven't.
He's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure how this is relevant, but I heard him say he was going to talk about the importance of, well, it's something that distinguishes humans from other beings,
Yeah.
that we can function in large groups. And so that, I've forgotten his specific example, but one is that you could go to wherever it was you went last week, and not only would there be people there who could understand what you said and you could understand them, but you'd have some general worldviews that was compatible. with each other. And well, this is one example was the way that religion affects things, can affect things and affect us. That I think he was talking about chimpanzees, and you couldn't offer, well, or if you offered a chimpanzee, and I mean, this requires language that we don't have with them, but you couldn't offer a chimpanzee a banana, or get a chimpanzee to give you a banana. So if you give me this banana now, then when you die, you'll have all the bananas you want. You do this now, later on, you will be happy forever. That's not going to fly with the chimpanzee, because he's got the banana now, and he's not giving it to you based on some verbiage.
Yeah. Hopefully no one would.
Well, but we do it all the time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of like how little that hypothetical person reasoned that out in front of the chimpanzee, hopefully no one would
go
buy
for that. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know, but it can happen anyway. Or that you could you could drive, and this gets to, touches on the traffic and traffic rules and stuff, but you could drive to Sacramento and get on a plane and or drive to Sacramento, park your car, go in and have an interchange with the people at the ticket desk or whatever, and exchange paper and numbers and letters with somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
Because of this system.
Yeah.
Upon which we have all agreed, tacitly or overtly.
Yeah.
And that kind of coordination just doesn't happen in any other group other than with people.
Yeah.
Right, and that's our primary advantage in this world, is that we can do things that require thousands of people, hundreds, millions, and that just couldn't happen without that agreement.
Without those
them.
agreements.
And my guess is that it has a lot to do with our frontal cortex that enables us to conceptual thinking and stuff that just doesn't seem to work with any other species.
Yeah, it's like a human can make agreements and remake agreements.
Right.
And ideally, is updating those agreements as necessary too, as life changes and new information comes through.
Right.
Whereas a chimpanzee in its current state, though who knows where they'll go.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
how the Earth will evolve. Has kind of made an agreement already on being a chimpanzee.
Mm-hmm.
The chimpanzee consciousness agreed on that game of being a chimpanzee, and we do this.
This is what we do.
This is what we do, and that agreement is just set in motion. Whereas a human, we also have a basic creaturehood and nature agreement that we're already starting with, like biological contract of how things are going.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have this ability to build agreements on top of that.
Yes.
And
elaborate and revise and right as we go.
As we go, yeah. And ideally those agreements, when building monuments, like ideally those agreements are just built soundly, are made in conjunction with what we've started, on top of what we started, or and work with the foundations of what we started. And I think, so that all that more abstract view, I think that's part of this general reaching back to primal nature that's happening, is we're reaching back to our foundational contract as earthlings, as creatures of the earth, because we see that we've built up monuments that need to refer back down to the foundation, to the primitives, to the primitive, to the primal, if they're going to hold.
Right.
Because we're trying to build a monument of humanity, but it has to be solid the whole way through.
Right.
Or it'll be Babylon.
Yeah.
and fall over.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it's really appropriate, this this return to primalness that's happening. I think it's very appropriate and important. In order to build. Like those monumental architecture is built on primitive nature. It's not built in spite of it.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's going to be a true monument, if humanity is going to be a true monument, it's built on our primitive creaturehood.
It's going to incorporate all that.
Not in spite of it. And so a lot of us, like myself, just needing to go through and understand what those foundations are, both in the primitive sense, like understand the way back, but also like understand the foundations of our civilization itself.
Yeah. Which is saying something.
Yeah. Like we can't, yeah, like I'm using this building image and thinking of like where we are in history, where like things are progressing constantly, and it sounds like things are in some ways better than they've ever been.
It's got to be me.
Okay, so using the building as like a metaphor, the monument, and like a skyscraper as a monument, as a metaphor for like the human endeavor, the human journey, and how like it seems in ways that we're like at a kind of it's not totally true, but it seems like it feels like we're at a standstill. Like, at least in the unified sense. We're not like moving forward as a human race.
Oh,
Which is not true, because we are. But I'm just thinking, but it seems like a lot of people feel like that.
yeah, it seems that way.
That are like craving progress, but like not seeing it. And I think, so using this image of a building, like, yeah, if we're going to keep building up, unless we want it to fall over, we have to go back down and examine our foundations.
To ensure that they're sound.
To ensure that they're sound, and to see which parts are sound, what made them sound, because other people built that part.
Right.
So we have to go back and understand what made them sound, what parts are shaky, and do some delicate work of understanding before we can, build further.
Yeah.
Certainly what I feel like where I am in my life.
So how does one know, well, how do we define progress? How do we recognize it? How do you recognize it? Because things change all the time, but you know,
That's a good question.
the connotation anyway of progress is that it's good, that it's improvement.
Yeah, it has an
In some
inherent
way.
kind of association.
Right.
But by what terms? By what standards?
Right. Right. And there are, well, you know, the people called progressives these days are, you know, as far as I can tell, at least flaky, you know. Maybe not entirely, but
What do you mean?
I think a lot of the well, for instance, cancel culture is very, I don't know, might be the same thing as just kind of a group shaming of somebody or a group or
Critique
a,
taken to an extreme.
exactly. And at this point, I think it's at least debatable, and clearly it is, and lots of people are debating it. But some of the things that are thought of as progressive are just really radically different, not necessarily
Progress.
good for humanity as a whole in the long run. Just a kind of blip. In the same way that, at least here in the U.S., menthol cigarettes were promoted as beneficial. The menthol was good for you. And you know, if you had a cough, then you need a menthol cigarette.
Oh, honey, you need a menthol. Just have a menthol, you'll be fine.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I've seen in print ads where, you know, more doctors recommend Lucky Strikes or whatever, Camels or something than any other brand. And but now we think that was just the height of goofiness. But that was the zeitgeist, you know, 100 years ago, 70 years ago.
Yeah, which is definitely motivated by fuckery.
Yeah.
And greed in its sort of blind context. Let's try to answer that question though. If like you asked me, how do we define progress? In terms of humanity, I think less people dying from famine is progress. Less people dying from crazy diseases is probably good. More people having more money, I think is good.
Yeah.
It's progress. More people having the opportunity to make money, I think is progress.
Okay. I can see that. Right. Yeah, I can see that. And generally those criteria or criteria like that have been my go-to. And lately I've been thinking of people as an invasive species.
Okay.
And
go on.
And so that all the things we, all the saving lives and making it easier for people and stuff like that is in aid of that part of our nature, the invasive part. I've seen indications that, or some numbers, I guess, that population seems to be leveling off.
I've heard that.
It's not burgeoning the way it has been for, 100 years.
Yeah.
And some people are alarmed by that. Because there won't be another billion, next year. But I think that's good. Or at least I think that could easily be good, a good thing. and that somehow overall, just in terms of the Earth as an organism, that's part of a balancing tendency. That there are, because a lot of people think there are too many folks. That's really the problem. Overpopulation. Too many people.
It's a common thing to yell.
Right, right. And so I'm on the fence. I don't know, but I know that there are a lot of people, and I don't see how fewer people could be bad. Now maybe it matters, why, I suppose.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does. I don't. I agree. I think there is probably a natural earthly homeostasis that's constantly in flux,
Right.
and keeping things in check, and
Mm-hmm.
sprouting up diseases when things need to be culled. And
Right. Yeah.
I think there is a bit of natural checks and balances going on there, which is part of why I also think that should be at least very skeptical about saying there are too many humans.
Oh, right.
Because it's like, says who and why are you saying that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you actually know some greater synthesis of information about the Earth in its entirety and what it can hold? And
No.
probably most 99% you do not, and no one fucking knows
No.
what the Earth can handle.
Right.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about it like that before. Like, when people talk about the world being overpopulated, like, you have no idea. You have no fucking clue.
No.
You've heard someone say that, and
Right. Read it somewhere.
it fits in with your own fear that humans are an invasive species.
Right.
And that you are particularly an invasive species. Which,
Especially you.
yeah. Yeah, which I think I just take serious issue with more than ever, like, and challenging my own versions of that, and needing to challenge my own versions of that, because, like, it's motivated heavily by, like, some original sin shit, and shame about creaturehood, and shame about your having any sort of effect whatsoever upon the world.
Yeah. Right.
As if we were not literally made of the earth.
Right. Like we're not supposed to be here.
Like we're not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And I do not like that idea that we are not supposed to be here, that we're an invasive species. I think it's just not, I think it's a terrible idea, and I think it's not true. It's literally just not true, and acting like we're an invasive species gives a lot of power to anyone who hates the world, because it gives them license to to call and enact their hatred of the world upon it and upon humanity, really.
Right.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't think it's true. I don't think we are an invasive species. I think where that comes from, partially, if I were to try to do that and articulate that, is like one part of it is just the scales fell from our eyes as a species. We became conscious that of our effect, and
Mm-hmm.
we became able to have judgments about it, and to see our effect as like an objective thing. That we have an effect, just basically. Plus, yeah, a lot of motivating shame
Mm-hmm.
and coerced ideas of guilt.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah, I don't think we're an invasive species. I think, like, we are. This is an idea of Jane Roberts. That like we are the eyes of the earth. We are the discerning eyes. We are the voice of the earth. We're of the body of the earth. And like we're meant to see the world in its particularity and categorize and give voice to it and
Mm-hmm.
build on it. Like we're the thing that can build upon the earth, can move the earth forward in an elaborate way.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and that sounds like, or reminds me of what I mentioned about Harari and our people's ability to, or yeah, ability to do coordinated action. And you function in a coordinated way thousands of miles away. Because that's nothing else is going to do is going to do that.
Yeah.
Or no other animals. I mean, I am kind of interested in is that the do I want to say mitochondria? I'm not sure that's the word, but in the soil,
The mycelium?
mycelium.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's really new.
Yeah, it's blowing up.
And,
The idea of
we
mycelium and
just
mushrooms.
discovered it, you know, for all practical purposes, you know, very recently,
Yeah,
and its connections to each other, to itself,
and everything.
and everything. Yeah, and
Yeah,
what's that all about?
yeah, yeah,
What's that doing? It's got to be doing something. You know, we all have some effect on other things. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's the Lord.
I mean, it's certainly the little bit I know is that the mycelial reality is vast and fucking ancient and covers most of the earth
Yeah.
and connects most things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like the most physical, like the most objective example of connectivity I think we've ever encountered.
Yeah.
I think that's part of why it's so cool.
As far as I know, yeah. Yeah.
I think my closing note would be just in the context of what we talked about today, like talking about like where does civilization and the primitive meet, building on the primitive rather than in spite of it, building architecture. I think of the Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. That's all about architecture, and the hero of the story is an architect.
Right.
And that is a beautiful, glorious display of the integration of those things.
Okay.
Where his buildings come out of the landscape. His buildings are made, he's an artist. They're in context with the landscape. And then he builds off of that. And she often describes the buildings as if like they were meant to be there when you see them.
Okay.
And it's as if the earth was like being given a chance to elaborate upon itself through this human.
Okay.
And that's what I think humans are.
Okay.
And that's, I think, what we're actually supposed to be doing. And how it could work. And often does, I think, more than not.
Mm-hmm.
And the element of context, I think, maybe it gets associated with the primitive, like they live in the natural world.
Right.
And the proper human builder builds in context of the world, not in spite of it, in context with the world.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I ran across something not long ago that talked about the word artificial and artifice, and
Okay.
how we generally now artificial is not complimentary if you say something is artificial.
Yeah, it's immediately associated to be like
Yeah.
bad.
Bad, right? Or sets, or just out of place.
Yeah.
And it didn't start out like that. That if to say something was artificial was a compliment. because the emphasis was on art and
Sure.
that contribution that somebody made to the world by manipulating these materials, whatever they were, and creating something that that hadn't existed before
Yeah, and couldn't have.
and couldn't have, right, without that human interference, maybe assistance, you know, depending on your point of view. Yeah, and so this civilization is a tricky business. People in large groups, very, you know, it's very,
It's work in progress.
it's a work in progress. Yeah, progress in the, I don't know what sense that would be, probably more basic, just that it's continuous. There was a past, and presumably there'll be a future, and this is progress in that it's moving from the past to the future, but it doesn't really imply improvement, just some inherent or maybe artificial development of whatever's been going on. It's changing. It's doing things. It's affecting other things around it. And those processes change as we go on, and we can call it progress, and I suppose it is, unless progress is always good. And I guess that, yeah, my judgment is that it isn't. It's just what comes next.
Well, yeah, maybe that's another thing we should dig into sometime. I think progress is inherently good.
Yeah.
If it's actual progress. Otherwise, it's something else.
And do you have a word for it?
Well, I guess there's a process of judgment. It has to be, you have to determine whether it's progress in context
Right.
with what came before. And up to that point of it being labeled progress, I would just say it's change.
Yes. Okay. Just change. Yeah, that's
And
neutral.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I would like to think ultimately things are just progressing, like the universe is neutral good, progressing towards better and better. But definitely in the human context, we have to go through the process of evaluating our effects
Yeah.
and determining if it's progress in light of our life. And
Yeah. That little slice that we know about.
yeah.